Good morning, family. Welcome back again to the village. As you can see from the pictures I'm showing, this video is going to be slightly very different because I had the amazing privilege to chat and spend the day with the legendary lady you're looking at. She's very famous. If you don't know her, then I don't know what you're watching out on YouTube. So I'm going to talk about a very different journey about returning to the village, but from the perspective of a legendary person who has been wildly successful. And if you don't know who she is, by the end of the video, you will know her. By the end of the video, I will share with you some of the secrets behind her amazing success. Now, many folks in Africa, particularly, are born in the village, and then after school, they move off to the village for better opportunities. Others are born in the city, raised in the city, but for different reasons choose to move back to the village. And so in today's episode, I'm going to focus on moving back to the village, but from a much closer home's perspective. That is, folks moving from the city back to the village. And again, a lot of what I'm going to share comes from the perspective of the phenom herself. And I will share a lot of our stories and stories of many other folks that I have talked to. She's shared so many nuggets. I just wished I was taking notes somewhere. But I'll tell you as much as I remember from our conversation. Now, the legend you're looking at is called Jael from the village. She's a very close friend who is practically family at this point. And so I spent the afternoon with her, chit-chatting, getting fed, and just listening to all of her wisdom. And for those of you who don't know Jael, I think there's only the two of you out there. Jael moved from a very big city, which is Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, into a smaller city called Nyasore. Now, Nyasore, basically, in my mother tongue, refers to an amazing plant that has the general ability to increase the level of human happiness 11 times. However, it has some side effects. For example, after enjoying it, you may experience enhanced appetite. I've also been told that it helps with a biological process known as loropap. And I don't know enough English to translate that. But I also know that this particular herb makes everything look magical, whether it's flies, wind, sound, and so many things. Now, don't ask me how I know that. But the first time I actually went to this village a few years ago, when I saw the name, I was really excited to go there and see what's up. But when I got there, I was quite disappointed because it turns out that this city called Nyasore has none of Nyasore, not a single plant out there. And so I think they should either change that name or they need to up their game so that they don't disappoint visitors who may be excited. Well, Jael here is basically what we call the marketing scheme of all things transition in Kenya. She has been wildly successful in farming, feeding in the village, family, philanthropy, parenting, and then the list goes on and on and on. And I wish we had more time or we had a longer video to talk about her. But in this particular visit, I was particularly awestruck by her humility, her grace, her warmth. I mean, unfortunately, again, I forgot to take an autograph. But her mom is on another level. That lady is extremely sweet. And they fed me a lot. I didn't film all of that, but this family is just amazing. Clearly, this particular fruit just fell on top of the tree, not next to it. And so I hope some of you will have a chance to get to meet her and enjoy some of what we enjoy for those of us who've interacted with her. She does a lot of videos about thriving in the village. And if you've never heard of her, and again, I believe only two of you have never heard of her, make sure you go check her out. It's Jael of the village. Don't just watch her videos, be sure to subscribe. So I learned quite a few things, but in this particular video, I'm only going to talk about two things. One, it turns out that there's a lot of misconceptions about moving from the city to the village in Africa. And so I'm going to give you a list of the misconceptions I've heard about and dispel many of those. So let's start with misconception number one. A lot of folks believe that when a person moves from the city to the village, then that is an indicator of failure. That it's only failure that move people from cities to the village. The second misconception is that those who are moving to the village are getting ready to go and suffer. That there's very little to enjoy in the village. It's all suffering and hard work. The third misconception is that there is no money in the village. That it's all poverty everywhere. I mean, that's what they say. And then they say that in the village, there are no modern comforts. And these things are hard to come by. Excuse me. Whether you're talking about internet, indoor plumbing, entertainment, all that, you don't get that in the village. The next misconception is about the idea that superstition is rife in the village. And so there's thoughts that people are in danger if they're doing some development in the village. The next misconception is that the trip from the city to the village is a one-way trip, that you head out there and you never come back to the city, you're just going to die, basically. And the next one is that only people who are unsophisticated or people who are simply nuts are the ones who move to the village. Well, how true that is, we are going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. And then the next one is that people move from the city, people who move from the city to the village have a very hard time to adjust, that it is near impossible to make it. And then the next one is that in the village, people tend to die young. Whether that's true or not, we are going to find out. And the last one is that the village is basically filled with culturally backward folks, or what in French we call kienyeji. Now, before I get into the details of this particular misconception, I want to emphasize one point that I've shared in many of my videos, that in truth, the village is not for everybody. Not everybody has to move to the village. And even if you desire to move to the village, you may not be ready at this time. It simply means you have to prepare. So let's dispel these misconceptions one at a time. The first, which I mentioned, was that people move to the village because they failed. It turns out that so many people in the city just love village life. And so if they get the opportunity to move to the village, they do so. A lot of folks just have had enough of the city life. And Jael is a perfect example of as a city person who just had enough of what the city offers and decided to just move back to the village. Many folks also move because of job transfer and retirement. So it is not true that people move to the village only because they have failed. The next misconception is about suffering. Trust me, the village has a lot of what we call soft life. Can you imagine a rent-free life? Utility bills, zero. Food, very cheap. Labor, very cheap. And the freedom that it comes with it. Because in the city, in the village, because you're far from the city, there's very little regulation as to what you can and cannot do. So much freedom. And then far lower levels of stress. Like currently right now in Kenya, there's a lot of folks demonstrating, young folks demonstrating out there, and there's been a little bit of not so fun stuff happening. In the village, you'd never even know that there's anything going on. Life is about 100% the same. And so suffering in the village don't go together. Number 3, that there's no money in the village. What a lie, what a lie. I wish I could give you the numbers from Jael and I's conversation, but I can't share with you. But there's plenty of ways to make money in the village. Misconception number 4, that modern comforts don't exist in the village. Travel to the village and see what happens. Today, people are building haciendas and building up every single thing you can find in the city. And so I have not seen a single modern comfort that I cannot find in the village. So that is not true. And then on the question of superstition, there's this thought that in the village, people believe that if you're doing some development project, something will happen to you. Historically, that has been true. But currently, I think the evil spirits must have retired, or maybe they're on vacation. None of that is true. The question as to whether going to the village is a one-way trip, not even remotely true. Because a lot of people in the village go back and forth. They do what they need to do in the village, but also travel back to the city as they desire, just as many diaspora folks do. And then the idea that only unsophisticated folks live in the village could not be any more untrue. In the village, you have pretty much everybody, just like you do in the city. And that the next misconception that people move to the village to simply go and die. Not necessarily true. Actually, some of the oldest folks in Kenya live in the village because the village really is kind of set up to take care of older folks. So no, the life expectancy, I suspect, is probably higher for specific groups of folks. Like, for example, those who are young between ages of 18 and maybe 35 in the city have a higher risk of dying than probably their peers in the village. And then, of course, the last one about cultural backwardness could not be any more true. I mean, any more untrue. Because a lot of people in the village live very close to nature, have very limited interest in Western life. And I would say they live a culturally legit lifestyle. Now, that's a big topic to explore in a 10-minute video, but I hope in the next one, we are going to spend some time exploring that. So in summary, all I'm trying to say is that, number one, the village is not for everybody. But for the few who desire to experience that, I assure you, this is an amazing, amazing lifetime commitment. All it takes is the choice to make that commitment and to put in the work that it requires to do so. And so even if you choose to move to the village, it doesn't have to be a permanent experience. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please feel free to subscribe. Thank you.